Maya Rodriguez stepped out of her beat-up Honda Civic and stared at the imposing brick facade of Lincoln High School. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot, where clusters of students gathered around expensive cars and pickup trucks. She adjusted the straps of her worn backpack and took a deep breath, tasting the unfamiliar air of small-town Nebraska. 3 weeks ago, she had been walking the halls of her San Diego high school, surrounded by friends who knew her story. Now she stood alone in a place where nobody understood what she had been through or why her family had moved here so suddenly. Her father's job transfer had come without warning, pulling her away from everything familiar during her senior year. The bell rang, its harsh sound echoing across the courtyard. Students began moving toward the building in waves, their conversations creating a buzz that made Maya feel even more isolated. She noticed how they moved in established groups, invisible boundaries marking territories she didn't understand yet. The athletes wore their leather jackets like armor. The theater kids clustered near the arts wing. The academic achievers carried themselves with quiet confidence. Maya didn't fit into any obvious category. Her clothes were practical rather than fashionable. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of styled like the other girls. She moved with a certain economy of motion that came from years of training, but, to casual observers, she just looked like another quiet new student trying not to draw attention. In first period English, Mrs. Henderson introduced her to the class with the standard new student speech. Maya stood briefly, offered a polite smile, and sat down quickly. She felt 25 pairs of eyes studying her, making judgments based on surface observations. The whispers started immediately. "She looks weird," someone muttered behind her. "Probably some military brat," another voice added. Maya kept her expression neutral, though her jaw tightened slightly. She had learned long ago that reactions only made things worse. Instead, she focused on the lesson, taking careful notes, and trying to blend into the background. At lunch, the social dynamics became more obvious. The cafeteria was divided into invisible kingdoms, each table representing a different tribe within the school's ecosystem. Maya bought her lunch and looked around for an empty spot, finally settling at a table near the windows where a few other quiet students sat scattered across the long benches. She was halfway through her sandwich when Brittany Coleman approached with her entourage. Brittany was everything Maya wasn't: blonde, perfectly styled, wearing clothes that probably cost more than Maya's family spent on groceries in a month. She was also clearly used to being the center of attention wherever she went. "You're the new girl, right?" Brittany asked, her voice carrying just enough sweetness to mask the underlying calculation. Maya looked up, chewing slowly. "Maya Rodriguez. That's a pretty name. Very ethnic." Brittany's smile never wavered, but her friends giggled behind her. "Where are you from exactly?" "San Diego." "Oh, California. How exotic. What brought your family all the way out here to our little town?" Maya could feel the trap being set, though she wasn't sure what form it would take. "My dad got transferred for work." "What kind of work does he do?" "He's in logistics." It was technically true. Her father did handle logistics, though not the kind Brittany was probably imagining. Maya had learned to give simple, truthful answers that didn't invite follow-up questions. Brittany leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was still loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Well, I hope you'll fit in here. It's a pretty close-knit community. We all look out for each other, you know? Sometimes new people find it hard to adjust to our way of doing things." The warning was subtle but clear. Maya nodded politely and returned to her lunch, hoping Brittany would lose interest and move on. Instead, the blonde girl lingered, studying Maya like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You know, you remind me of someone," Brittany said finally. "There was this girl who used to go here, Jessica something. She was kind of quiet and serious like you. Turned out she had some real issues at home. Had to leave school for a while to get help." Maya's grip on her sandwich tightened, but she didn't look up. She recognized the technique, the casual mention of someone else's problems as a way of suggesting that Maya might have similar issues. It was sophisticated bullying, designed to plant seeds of doubt and isolation. "I'm fine," Maya said quietly. "Of course you are," Brittany replied with artificial warmth. "I'm just saying, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." We all are. After Brittany and her group moved on, Maya sat in the relative quiet and finished her lunch. She could feel other students watching her now, curious about the interaction they had witnessed. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed entertained by the potential drama. A few appeared to be waiting to see which side would prove stronger. The afternoon brought more subtle probing. In chemistry class, Maya found herself partnered with Tom Harrison, one of Brittany's satellite friends. He was pleasant enough on the surface, asking casual questions about her previous school and her interests. But Maya recognized the intelligence gathering for what it was. "So did you play any sports in California?" Tom asked as they measured chemical solutions. "Some," Maya replied without elaborating. "Like what?" "Track, mostly." It was partly true. She had run track, though it was just one small part of a much more comprehensive training program. Tom seemed disappointed by her vague answer, but pressed on. "What about other activities? Drama club? Student government?" "Not really. I kept pretty busy with other things." "What kind of things?" Maya looked at him directly for the first time during the conversation. "Family stuff." Again, technically true. Her family had been very involved in her training, though not in the way Tom was probably imagining. Maya had learned that the truth could be an effective shield if you knew how to use it properly. The pattern continued through her other classes. Friendly questions that felt more like interrogations. Casual comments designed to probe for weaknesses or unusual reactions. Maya navigated each encounter with the same calm politeness, giving away nothing useful while remaining technically cooperative. By the end of the first day, she could see the frustration building in Brittany's circle. They had expected her to reveal something they could use: family problems, social awkwardness, academic struggles, anything that would give them leverage. Instead, they had encountered someone who seemed almost unnaturally composed for a displaced teenager. Walking to her car after school, Maya noticed she was being followed by two of Brittany's friends, Jessica and Amanda. They stayed far enough back to maintain plausible deniability while close enough to observe where she went and what she drove. Maya pretended not to notice, but she made mental notes about their surveillance techniques and methods. At home that evening, Maya sat in her sparsely furnished bedroom and called her best friend back in San Diego. Carmen had been her closest companion since middle school, one of the few people who knew the full truth about Maya's background. "How was the first day?" Carmen asked. "Exactly what I expected," Maya replied. "Queen bee trying to establish dominance. Probably going to get worse before it gets better. You could just tell them the truth. Shut them down real quick." Maya smiled despite herself. "You know I can't do that. The whole point of moving here was to have a normal senior year. Normal is overrated. You've earned the right to be extraordinary. Normal is what I want right now. Normal is what my parents want for me." Carmen sighed. "Well, just remember that you don't have to take whatever they dish out. You're not helpless, even if you're pretending to be." After hanging up, Maya lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Carmen was right, of course. She wasn't helpless. She was probably the least helpless person in that entire school. But revealing that fact would defeat the purpose of everything her family had sacrificed to give her this opportunity. Her parents had moved here specifically so she could experience normal teenage life. After everything she had been through, they wanted her to have friends, go to prom, worry about college applications instead of survival scenarios. They wanted her to be just another student facing typical high school challenges. The irony wasn't lost on her. In trying to protect her from one kind of difficulty, they had placed her directly in the path of another. But Maya understood their reasoning, even if she sometimes questioned their methods. She pulled out her homework and began working through the assignments. The academic work was easier than what she was used to, which gave her more time to observe and adapt to the social environment. She made careful notes about the key players in the school's social structure, their relationships to each other, and their likely motivations. Brittany Coleman was clearly the alpha of her group, but she wasn't just a simple mean girl. She was smart, strategic, and patient. She would probe for weaknesses methodically before making any major moves. Her followers each served specific functions. Tom was the intelligence gatherer, Jessica was the enforcer, Amanda was the social coordinator. There were others in the outer circle who could be activated as needed. Maya had dealt with more dangerous adversaries, but she had never had to do it while pretending to be helpless. The challenge wasn't surviving their attacks. It was surviving them without revealing her true capabilities. She had to lose without appearing to lose, defend herself without appearing to defend herself. The next morning brought the first real test. Maya arrived at school to find her locker had been vandalized. Someone had taped a note to the front that read, "Go back where you came from," in childish block letters. The glue was fresh, probably applied within the last hour. Maya looked around casually, noting who was watching her reaction. Brittany and her friends stood near their own lockers about 20 feet away, engaged in what appeared to be casual conversation while stealing glances in Maya's direction. Several other students had positioned themselves where they could observe without appearing to stare. Maya removed the note calmly, crumpled it up, and tossed it in a nearby trash can. She opened her locker normally and retrieved her books for first period. Her expression remained neutral throughout, showing neither anger nor distress. A few students looked disappointed by her lack of reaction. In English class, Mrs. Henderson handed back graded essays from the previous week. Maya had written about her experience moving to a new place, focusing on the challenges of adapting to different regional cultures within the United States. It was a safe topic that allowed her to demonstrate good writing skills without revealing anything personal. She received an A-, which put her among the top students in the class. As she looked over the teacher's comments, she noticed Brittany watching her from across the room. There was calculation in those blue eyes, as if she was reassessing her target based on new information. At lunch, Maya chose the same table as the day before. This time, however, she wasn't allowed to eat in peace. Jessica and Amanda approached together, carrying their trays and wearing bright smiles. "Mind if we sit here?" Jessica asked, though she was already pulling out a chair. Maya gestured politely to the empty seats. Jessica and Amanda sat down directly across from her, close enough to dominate the conversation while maintaining the appearance of friendliness. "We wanted to apologize for yesterday," Amanda began. "Brittany can be a little intense when she meets new people. She means well, but sometimes she comes on too strong." Maya nodded politely and continued eating her salad. "The thing is," Jessica continued, "we've been talking, and we realized we don't really know anything about you. That's not fair to you or to us. So we thought we'd ask directly, what's your story?" It was a more aggressive approach than the day before, designed to put Maya on the defensive by demanding personal information under the guise of friendship. Maya considered her options before responding. "Not much of a story," she said finally. "Dad got transferred, family moved, trying to finish senior year without falling behind." "But what about before that?" Amanda pressed. "What was your life like in San Diego?" "Pretty normal. School, homework, helping my family." "What kind of help?" Jessica asked. Maya looked up from her food, meeting Jessica's eyes directly. Whatever they needed. There was something in Maya's voice that made Jessica hesitate. Not quite a warning, but a subtle indication that this line of questioning might not be wise to pursue. Amanda either didn't notice or chose to ignore it. "Come on," Amanda said with a laugh that sounded forced. "Everyone has stories. Boyfriends, parties, embarrassing moments. You can't tell me you lived like a nun for 17 years. Maya set down her fork and gave Amanda her full attention. The movement was small but somehow commanding, causing both girls to sit back slightly in their chairs. "I'm pretty boring," Maya said with a slight smile. "Sorry to disappoint." The conversation continued for another few minutes, but the dynamic had shifted. Jessica and Amanda found themselves working harder to maintain control of the interaction while Maya responded with polite but uninformative answers. They left the table frustrated and empty-handed. That afternoon in gym class, Maya faced her next challenge. They were playing volleyball, and the teacher had divided the class into teams randomly. Maya found herself on the same side of the net as Brittany and most of her core group. Maya had always been athletic, but she had learned to hide the full extent of her capabilities. In volleyball, that meant playing competently without dominating. She positioned herself well, made solid passes, and contributed to successful plays without standing out as exceptional. Brittany, however, seemed determined to create a confrontation. She began directing increasingly sharp comments at Maya's performance, criticizing her positioning and technique in front of the other players. "You need to call for the ball," Brittany said after a point where Maya had rotated to avoid interfering with a teammate's play. "Communication is important in team sports." "Maya's doing fine," said Sarah, a quiet girl who rarely spoke up in social situations. She's been setting up good plays all period. Brittany turned her attention to Sarah with a withering look. I don't remember asking for your opinion, Sarah. Sarah flushed and looked down, effectively silenced. Maya made a mental note about the interaction. Brittany was willing to attack anyone who showed support for Maya, which meant she was feeling more threatened than her casual demeanor suggested. The game continued with Brittany finding fault with nearly everything Maya did. When Maya served an ace, Brittany commented that she should have aimed for a different spot. When Maya made a good dig, Brittany suggested she should have gotten to it faster. When Maya rotated positions, Brittany criticized her for being out of sync with the team. Maya absorbed the criticism without response, which seemed to frustrate Brittany even more. By the end of class, the blonde girl was practically grinding her teeth with annoyance. Walking back to the locker room, Maya overheard part of a conversation between Brittany and Jessica. There's something off about her, Brittany was saying. Normal people react when you push them. She's like a robot or something. Maybe she's just really shy, Jessica suggested. No, that's not it. Shy people get nervous. She doesn't get nervous. It's like she's playing some kind of game. Maya changed clothes quickly and left the gym before the conversation could continue. But Brittany's words stayed with her. She was right that Maya was playing a game, though not the kind Brittany suspected. The question was how long Maya could maintain her cover before someone figured out the truth. That evening, Maya received a text from an unknown number. You don't belong here. Leave now and save yourself the trouble. She stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Anonymous threats were a classic escalation technique, designed to create fear and isolation. Maya had encountered far more sophisticated psychological warfare, but she had to admit that this felt different when she couldn't respond with her full capabilities. She was walking a tightrope between appearing vulnerable enough to be a normal teenager and strong enough to avoid being completely destroyed. It required a delicate balance that was proving more challenging than she had anticipated. Maya looked out her bedroom window at the quiet suburban street below. In a few mo, the harassment escalated over the following week with calculated precision. Maya found her textbooks missing from her locker, discovered gum stuck to her desk chair, and received a steady stream of anonymous texts containing increasingly creative insults. Each incident was small enough to seem like typical teenage drama, but together they formed a pattern of systematic intimidation. Maya documented everything methodically while maintaining her facade of quiet endurance. She photographed the vandalism, saved the text messages, and made notes about who was present during each incident. Her training had taught her that information was the most valuable weapon, especially when direct confrontation wasn't an option. On Wednesday morning, she arrived at school to find her car tires had been deflated overnight. Not slashed, that would have been criminal vandalism. Just deflated enough to be inconvenient without causing permanent damage. It was a message that someone had access to her transportation and wasn't afraid to use it. Maya called her father from the parking lot, explaining the situation in careful terms. David Rodriguez listened without comment, though she could hear the tension in his breathing. Do you want me to come get you? He asked finally. No, I can handle this. Just might be late getting home. Maya. He paused, struggling with words. You know you don't have to prove anything to these people, right? I know, Dad. And you know that if things get serious, we can always. I know. But I want to try finishing this the normal way first. There was another long pause. Okay, but promise me you'll ask for help if you need it. Maya spent her lunch period in the auto shop classroom, where Mr. Peterson helped her use the air compressor to reinflate her tires. He was a gruff man in his 50s who had taught automotive repair for over 20 years. Seen this kind of thing before? He said as they worked. Usually escalates until someone gets hurt or fights back. You thinking of fighting back? Maya checked the tire pressure carefully. I'm thinking of staying out of trouble. Sometimes trouble finds you whether you want it or not. Mr. Peterson studied her with experienced eyes. You got family who can help if things get bad? Yeah, but I'd rather handle it myself. Independent type, huh? Nothing wrong with that, long as you know your limits. Maya nodded and thanked him for the help. She had limits, but they weren't the kind Mr. Peterson was probably thinking about. Her limits had more to do with maintaining her cover than protecting herself from a handful of small-town bullies. That afternoon in chemistry, Tom Harrison was more aggressive in his questioning. He had abandoned the pretense of casual conversation and was openly fishing for information that could be used against her. "So your family moves around a lot?" he asked while they worked on their lab assignment. "Not really. This is only the second time." "Where did you live before San Diego?" Maya hesitated for just a moment. "Different places. My dad's work required some travel." "What kind of work requires moving to Nebraska from California?" "Corporate logistics." Tom wasn't satisfied with vague answers anymore. "What company?" "It's pretty specialized. You probably wouldn't have heard of it." "Try me." Maya looked at him directly. "Why are you so interested in my father's employment history?" Tom flushed slightly but pressed on. "Just making conversation. Is that a problem?" "Not at all. I'm just wondering why my family's business matters so much to you." The question put Tom on the defensive, exactly as Maya intended. He mumbled something about curiosity and focused on his lab work for the rest of the period. But Maya knew the interrogation would continue in different forms. After school, she stayed late in the library to work on a research project. The building was mostly empty except for a few dedicated students and the librarian, Mrs. Chun, who was sorting returned books at the main desk. Maya found a quiet corner table and spread out her materials. She was deep into reading about the Industrial Revolution when she became aware of voices from the next aisle over. Brittany, Jessica, and Amanda had apparently followed her to the library, though they were trying to keep their conversation quiet. "She's definitely hiding something," Brittany was saying. "Normal people don't act like this when you mess with them." "Maybe she's just really tough," Amanda suggested. "Nobody's that tough without a reason," Jessica added. "I think Brittany's right. There's something she doesn't want us to know. So what do we do about it?" Amanda asked. Maya couldn't see them from her position, but she could hear the calculation in Brittany's voice when she answered. "We push harder. Make her crack. Everyone breaks eventually if you apply enough pressure." "What if she complains to the administration?" "About what?" "We haven't done anything she can prove. It's all been small stuff that could happen to anyone." Maya continued reading her textbook while listening to them plan her systematic destruction. They discussed spreading rumors about her family, engineering embarrassing situations in public, and isolating her from any potential allies. It was a comprehensive campaign designed to make her school life unbearable. When they finally left, Maya remained at her table and continued working. She felt oddly calm about what she had overheard. Knowing your enemy's strategy was always preferable to facing unknown threats. At least now she understood the scope of what she was dealing with. That evening, Maya's mother found her sitting on the back porch steps, staring out at the small yard behind their rental house. Maria Rodriguez was a quiet woman who missed very little about her daughter's moods and behaviors. "Rough day?" Maria asked, settling down beside her. "Getting rougher. Want to talk about it?" Maya considered how much to share. "Some kids at school are giving me a hard time. Nothing I can't handle." "What kind of hard time?" "The usual stuff. New girl, doesn't fit in, makes an easy target." Maria was quiet for a moment. "You know, when your father and I decided to move here, we thought we were giving you a chance at a normal teenage experience. Maybe that was selfish of us." "It wasn't selfish, Mom. I understand what you were trying to do. But it's not working out the way we hoped." Maya turned to look at her mother. "It's working fine. I'm learning things I never would have learned otherwise." "What kind of things?" "How to be patient. How to solve problems without using force. How to protect myself in ways that don't involve fighting back." Maria smiled sadly. "Those are important skills. But so is knowing when patience isn't enough." "I'm not there yet. But if you get there?" Maya looked back out at the yard. "Then I'll reassess my options." Friday brought the first direct physical confrontation. Maya was walking to her car after school when she found her path blocked by Jessica and two other girls she didn't recognize. They were positioned strategically to cut off her escape routes while maintaining plausible deniability about their intentions. "Hey Maya," Jessica said with artificial friendliness. "We wanted to talk to you about something." Maya stopped walking but didn't respond. She noted the positions of all four girls, identified potential exits, and calculated the time it would take to reach her car if she needed to run. "The thing is," Jessica continued, "we've been hearing some interesting rumors about you. Some people are saying your family left California because you were in some kind of trouble." "What kind of trouble?" asked one of the other girls. Well, that's what we're trying to figure out, Jessica said. Some people think it was legal trouble. Others think it might have been something more personal. Maya recognized the technique. They were trying to bait her into defending herself, which would give them ammunition for whatever story they wanted to spread. Instead, she just waited quietly for them to continue. So we thought we'd give you a chance to tell your side of the story, Jessica said when Maya didn't take the bait. Before the rumors get out of hand. I appreciate your concern, Maya said calmly. But I don't think my family's private business is anyone else's concern. See, that's the problem, Jessica said, stepping closer. When someone moves to our town and acts all secretive, it makes people nervous. We like to know who we're dealing with. Maya took a small step back, maintaining her distance while appearing to retreat. I'm just trying to finish high school and stay out of everyone's way. But you're not staying out of everyone's way, said the second unfamiliar girl. You're in our classes, eating in our cafeteria, taking up space that belongs to people who've been here their whole lives. The third girl nodded agreement. Maybe you should think about finding somewhere else to finish school. Somewhere more appropriate for someone with your background. Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Not anger, exactly, but a cold recognition that the situation was escalating beyond mere psychological warfare. She was still outnumbered and surrounded, but her body was unconsciously shifting into a different kind of readiness. I don't have any other options, she said quietly. This is where my family lives now. Families can move again, Jessica said, especially when they're not welcome where they are. Are you saying I'm not welcome here? I'm saying that some people fit in and some people don't. Smart people recognize which category they're in. Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying each of the four faces surrounding her. They were expecting either defiance or submission. What they got instead was careful assessment. I'll think about what you've said, Maya replied finally. Jessica smiled triumphantly. Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. The girls moved aside to let Maya pass, but just as she reached her car, Jessica called out one more comment. Oh, and Maya, we know where you live now. Nice little house on Maple Street. Very quiet neighborhood. It would be a shame if something happened to disturb that peace. Maya froze with her hand on the car door handle. The threat against her home crossed a line that changed everything about the situation. Her family's safety was not negotiable under any circumstances. She turned around slowly, meeting Jessica's eyes directly. What did you just say? Something in Maya's voice made Jessica take an involuntary step backward. For the first time since the confrontation began, the blonde girl looked uncertain. I just meant that it's a quiet neighborhood, Jessica said, her voice less confident than before. People notice when things get disruptive. Maya held her gaze for another moment, then got in her car without another word. But, as she drove home, she could see Jessica in her rearview mirror, standing exactly where Maya had left her, looking confused and slightly shaken. That evening, Maya sat in her room and made a phone call she had been avoiding for weeks. Commander Peterson's office answered a crisp male voice. This is Maya Rodriguez. I need to speak with the commander. One moment, please. There was a brief pause. Then, a familiar voice came on the line. Rodriguez, how's civilian life treating you? It's complicated, sir. How complicated? Maya explained the situation in precise, unemotional terms. Commander Peterson listened without interrupting, asking only a few clarifying questions when she finished. So what do you want to do about it? He asked finally. I'm not sure yet, but they threatened my family's home today. That changes the parameters of engagement. Copy that. What kind of support do you need? Information mostly. Background checks on the key players. Maybe some advice on maintaining cover while neutralizing the threat. Consider it done. Anything else? Maya was quiet for a moment. Permission to escalate, if necessary. You have carte blanche to protect yourself and your family, Peterson said without hesitation. But remember your objectives. You want it normal. Laying waste to a bunch of small-town teenagers isn't going to give you that. Understood, sir. Good. I'll have that intel to you by tomorrow morning. And Rodriguez. Yes, sir. Don't let them push you into doing something you'll regret later. You're better than that. After hanging up, Maya felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Maya's phone buzzed at 5:30 the next morning with an encrypted message containing detailed background information on her tormentors. Commander Peterson's intelligence network had worked quickly and thoroughly. Brittany Coleman came from old money. Her grandfather had founded the town's largest agricultural supply company. Her parents were prominent in local politics and social circles. She had never faced serious consequences for her actions, protected by family influence and careful plausible deniability in her methods. Jessica Martinez was more interesting. Her older brother had been arrested twice for assault, once for domestic violence. Her father had a gambling problem that had put the family in significant debt. Jessica's aggression seemed to stem from frustration about her family's declining social status and her desperate need to maintain her position in Brittany's inner circle. Amanda Foster was the follower of the group, seeking acceptance through loyalty rather than strength. Her divorced mother worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. Amanda's participation in the bullying campaign appeared motivated by fear of becoming a target herself rather than genuine malice. Maya studied the files while drinking her morning coffee. Understanding her opponent's motivations and vulnerabilities was the first step in developing an effective counter-strategy. But the information also reinforced her determination to handle the situation without destroying lives unnecessarily. At school, the morning brought a new level of harassment. Maya arrived to find her locker had been broken into and her textbooks scattered across the hallway floor. Students stepped around the mess without comment, averting their eyes to avoid getting involved. Maya knelt down and began collecting her books methodically. She noticed that someone had written comments in the margins of several pages, cruel observations about her appearance, intelligence, and family background. The handwriting was deliberately disguised, but Maya recognized certain letter formations that suggested Jessica as the most likely culprit. "Need some help?" asked a quiet voice behind her. Maya looked up to see Sarah Kim, the girl who had defended her in gym class the week before. Sarah was holding 2 of Maya's textbooks and wearing an expression of genuine concern. "Thanks," Maya said, accepting the books. "I appreciate it." "This is getting out of hand," Sarah said quietly, glancing around to make sure they weren't overheard. "Someone should report this to the administration." Maya stood up and closed her locker. "I don't think that would help much." "Why not?" "This is clearly harassment. Because they're too smart to leave evidence that leads back to them. And because complaining might just make it worse." Sarah frowned. "So you're just going to let them keep doing this?" Maya looked at the smaller girl thoughtfully. Sarah was offering an alliance, even though it would put her own social standing at risk. That kind of courage deserved respect. "I'm going to handle it," Maya said finally. "But I need to do it my way." "What's your way?" "Patience. Planning. Making sure that when I respond, it actually solves the problem instead of just escalating it." Sarah looked skeptical but nodded. "Well, if you change your mind about getting help, let me know. This isn't right, and some of us know it." In first period English, Mrs. Henderson returned graded research papers. Maya had written about the psychological effects of displacement on military families, drawing from academic sources while carefully avoiding personal experience. She received an A, along with a note asking her to stay after class. When the other students had left, Mrs. Henderson approached Maya's desk with a concerned expression. "Maya, I wanted to talk to you about something I've been noticing," the teacher said. "Several students have mentioned that you seem to be having some social difficulties." Maya kept her expression neutral. "I'm still adjusting to a new school. I understand that. But I'm also hearing reports about incidents involving your locker, your car, things like that. Is there something going on that I should know about?" Maya considered how to respond. Mrs. Henderson seemed genuinely concerned, but involving teachers would almost certainly make the situation worse. "Just typical new student stuff," Maya said. "Nothing I can't handle." Mrs. Henderson studied her carefully. "You know, Maya, I've been teaching for 15 years. I've seen a lot of different kinds of students, and you're unusual." "How so?" "Most teenagers your age, when they're facing social pressure, they either fight back aggressively or fall apart emotionally. You're doing neither. You're handling this situation with a level of composure that's remarkable for someone your age." Maya wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an expression of suspicion. "I just don't see the point in making drama over small things." "That's a mature attitude. But I want you to know that if these small things start becoming bigger things, my door is always open." At lunch, Maya sat alone at her usual table and opened a book while she ate. She was halfway through her sandwich when Brittany approached, flanked by her usual entourage, plus 2 additional girls Maya didn't recognize. "Maya, we need to talk," Brittany said, sliding into the seat across from her without invitation. Maya marked her place in the book and looked up. "About what?" "About the rumors that are starting to spread about you." Maya waited silently for elaboration. "People are saying some pretty nasty things," Jessica added from her position standing behind Brittany's chair. "About why your family really moved here." "What kind of things?" Maya asked. Brittany leaned forward conspiratorially. "Well, some people think your father might be running from something. Legal troubles, maybe. Or debt problems. Others are wondering if there might be some kind of family dysfunction involved," Amanda chimed in. "You know, the kind of thing that makes people need to start over somewhere new." Maya continued eating her lunch while they talked, showing no reaction to the increasingly personal attacks on her family's reputation. "The thing is," Brittany continued, "we tried to give you the benefit of the doubt. We really did. But when someone refuses to be open about their background, it makes people suspicious. And when someone acts like they're better than everyone else," Jessica added, "it makes people want to knock them down a peg." Maya set down her sandwich and gave them her full attention. "Is there something specific you want from me?" "We want honesty," Brittany said. "We want you to tell us who you really are and what you're really doing here." "I'm a 17-year-old girl trying to finish high school," Maya replied. "That's not particularly mysterious." "Bullshit," Jessica said, her voice rising slightly. "Normal 17-year-old girls don't act like you do. Normal girls get upset when people mess with their stuff. Normal girls defend themselves when they're being attacked." Several heads turned in their direction as Jessica's voice carried across the cafeteria. Maya noticed Sarah Kim watching from 2 tables away, along with several other students who seemed interested in the developing confrontation. "Maybe I handle stress differently than you do," Maya said calmly. "Or maybe you're hiding something so big that you can't risk drawing attention to yourself," Brittany countered. Maya considered her response carefully. She was being backed into a corner that would soon require either submission or revelation. Neither option served her long-term interests. "I think this conversation is over," she said, starting to pack up her lunch. "No," Jessica said, moving to block Maya's exit from the table. "This conversation is over when we say it's over." Maya looked up at Jessica, who was standing close enough to be physically intimidating. The girl's body language was aggressive, hands clenched at her sides, jaw tight with anger. She was clearly hoping to provoke a reaction that would justify further escalation. "Please move," Maya said quietly. "Make me." The challenge hung in the air between them, while half the cafeteria watched to see what would happen next. Maya was acutely aware of the dozens of phones probably recording the interaction, ready to capture whatever happened next for immediate distribution across social media. She stood up slowly, bringing herself to eye level with Jessica. At 5 feet 6 inches, Maya was slightly taller than the other girl, though not impressively so. What was impressive was the absolute stillness of her movement, the complete absence of nervous energy or defensive posturing. "I asked politely," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly but without anger. "I'm asking again. Please move." Something in Maya's tone made Jessica take a small step backward before she caught herself. But that momentary retreat was noticed by everyone watching, including Brittany. "Jessica, let her go," Brittany said with calculated dismissal. "She's not worth the trouble." Jessica stepped aside, but her face was flushed with embarrassment at having backed down. Maya picked up her tray and walked to the disposal area, aware of every eye following her progress. The confrontation had ended without violence, but it had also demonstrated that the situation was rapidly approaching a point where peaceful resolution might not be possible. That afternoon, Maya's car windshield was covered with shaving cream and toilet paper. The attack had taken place during 6th period, when the parking lot was mostly empty. Maya cleaned off the mess without comment while several students watched from the school's front steps. The message was clear. Her tormentors had moved beyond psychological pressure to active harassment of her property. They were also demonstrating that they could act against her at any time, regardless of witnesses or potential consequences. Maya documented the vandalism with photos and drove home through streets that seemed suddenly less welcoming than they had that morning. The quiet suburban neighborhood now felt like potential territory where her opponents could operate with impunity. That evening, she received another anonymous text. last warning. Leave voluntarily, or we'll make you leave. Maya stared at the message for a long moment, then forwarded it to Commander Peterson along with a brief situation update. His response came back within minutes. Time to end this. What do you need? Maya typed back. Permission to reveal limited capabilities. Non-lethal response only. Granted. Keep collateral damage to minimum. Maya deleted both message threads and sat back in her desk chair. The decision had been made for her by her opponent's refusal to accept boundaries. Tomorrow would bring a very different kind of interaction. She opened her laptop and began researching the local high school's security systems, daily schedules, and physical layout. If she was going to send a message, it needed to be precise, unmistakable, and impossible to trace back to her through official channels. Maya also spent time reviewing her mental files on each of her primary antagonists. Brittany was the strategic center of the group, but Jessica was the muscle. Amanda was the weak link who might break under pressure. Tom was the intelligence gatherer who probably had dirt on everyone. The key was isolating them and demonstrating her capabilities in a way that would end the harassment permanently without revealing the full extent of her training. It was a delicate balance that required careful planning and flawless execution. Maya worked late into the night, developing contingency plans and backup strategies. She had been patient for weeks, hoping the situation would resolve itself through normal teenage social dynamics. But her opponents had mistaken patience for weakness and escalated beyond the point where passive resistance was effective. Maya arrived at school 40 minutes before the first bell, when the building was nearly empty except for custodial staff and a few early arriving teachers. She had spent the pre-dawn hours in careful preparation, both physical and mental, for what was coming. Her plan required precise timing and complete invisibility. She moved through the hallways like a ghost, avoiding security cameras and human observation with the skill of someone trained in infiltration techniques. Her targets were specific and her methods were designed to send an unmistakable message while maintaining plausible deniability. Brittany's locker was first. Maya bypassed the combination lock in less than 30 seconds using techniques that left no trace of forced entry. She didn't damage or remove anything. Instead, she left a single item that would be immediately recognizable to Brittany, but meaningless to anyone else. A photograph of Brittany's house taken from an angle that could only have been captured by someone with access to the neighbor's backyard. No threat was written on the photo. No message was attached. The image itself conveyed everything necessary. Someone with advanced surveillance capabilities knew exactly where Brittany lived and could access her home environment whenever they chose. Jessica's locker received similar treatment, but with a different message. Maya left a printed copy of Jessica's brother's arrest record, highlighting the domestic violence conviction with a yellow marker. Attached was a note in block letters. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Amanda's locker contained something more personal, a photograph of her mother leaving her second job at 3 in the morning, looking exhausted and worried. The message here was about vulnerability and the consequences of targeting someone's family. Maya completed all 3 tasks and exited the building without being seen. She drove around the block and returned at her normal time, parking in her usual spot and walking to first period as if nothing had changed. The reactions began during second period. Maya was in chemistry class when she heard Jessica's voice echoing down the hallway outside, high-pitched with anger and confusion. The shouting continued for several minutes before being muffled by a closing door. By lunch, word had spread through the school's social networks that something significant had happened to Brittany's inner circle. Maya sat at her usual table and observed the drama unfolding around her while maintaining complete innocence about its source. Brittany appeared in the cafeteria looking pale and shaken. Her usual confident posture had been replaced by nervous glances toward the exits and frequent checking of her phone. Jessica was nowhere to be seen, having apparently left school after her outburst in the hallway. Amanda sat with Brittany, but appeared to be crying quietly into her hands. Their usual table, normally the center of social activity, had become an island of distress that other students were actively avoiding. Maya continued eating her lunch and reading her book, showing no unusual interest in the drama. But she was careful to position herself where she could observe the reactions and gauge the effectiveness of her intervention. Tom Harrison approached her table during the middle of lunch period, sliding into the seat across from her without invitation. "Heard there was some excitement this morning," he said, trying to sound casual. Maya looked up from her book. "What kind of excitement?" "Someone got into some lockers. Did some things that have people pretty upset. That's unfortunate. I hope they catch whoever did it." Tom studied her face carefully. "Yeah, me too. Must have been someone with some pretty specialized skills." "Why do you say that?" "Well, no signs of forced entry. No witnesses. Very precise targeting. Almost like it was done by someone with professional training." Maya marked her place in the book and gave Tom her full attention. "Are you suggesting I had something to do with this?" "I'm not suggesting anything. Just making conversation about an interesting situation. It sounds like you're trying to connect me to criminal activity based on speculation." Tom flushed slightly. "I'm not accusing you of anything." "Good. Because that would be a serious allegation to make without evidence." Something in Maya's tone made Tom shift uncomfortably in his seat. He was clearly fishing for information, but her calm directness was putting him on the defensive instead of extracting admissions. "I just think it's interesting timing," he said weakly. "What's interesting about it?" "Well, you've been having problems with those girls, and now someone targets them specifically." Maya leaned back in her chair, studying Tom with the kind of focus that made him want to look away. "Tom, are you wearing a wire?" The question was so unexpected that Tom actually looked down at his chest before catching himself. "What? No. Why would you ask that?" "Because you're asking the kind of questions that someone might ask if they were trying to get me to confess to something on tape." "I'm not. I wouldn't. Or maybe you're just curious about whether I have the skills to do something like this?" Maya's voice remained conversational, but there was an undercurrent that made Tom increasingly nervous. "Is that what you want to know? Whether I could bypass security systems and access locked areas without leaving evidence?" Tom pushed back from the table. "I should probably get to class." "That's probably a good idea," Maya agreed, returning to her book. Tom left the cafeteria quickly, but Maya noticed him stopping to talk with two other students before disappearing into the hallway. The interrogation had failed to produce useful information, but it had confirmed that she was now the prime suspect for the morning's activities. After school, Maya was approached by Principal Davidson in the parking lot. He was a tired-looking man in his 50s who seemed genuinely concerned rather than accusatory. "Miss Rodriguez, do you have a moment?" he asked. Maya nodded and followed him back toward the building. They stopped in an empty hallway where their conversation couldn't be overheard. "I wanted to talk to you about some incidents that occurred this morning," Principal Davidson said. "Are you aware that several students had their lockers accessed by an unknown person? I heard there was some kind of trouble, but I don't know the details. The students involved have suggested that this incident might be connected to some social difficulties you've been experiencing." Maya considered her response carefully. "Principal Davidson, are you asking me if I broke into other students' lockers? I'm asking if you have any information that might help us understand what happened. I don't have any information beyond what everyone else has heard. If someone committed crimes on school property, I hope you'll involve the police and investigate properly." Principal Davidson studied her for a moment. "Miss Rodriguez, in my experience, problems like this usually escalate until someone gets hurt. I'm hoping we can resolve whatever's going on before that happens. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not sure what I can do to help resolve a situation I'm not involved in." "Are you saying you haven't been experiencing harassment from other students?" Maya hesitated. This was the opening she had been waiting for, a chance to make official complaints that would create a paper trail and force the administration to act. "I've had some difficulties adjusting socially," she said carefully, "but nothing I couldn't handle." "What kind of difficulties?" "Vandalism of my car. Damage to my textbooks. Anonymous threatening messages. Social exclusion. The usual things that happen when some students decide they don't want someone around." Principal Davidson looked surprised that she had documented evidence of harassment. "Do you have proof of these incidents?" "Photos, text messages, witness statements. I've been keeping records in case things escalated to the point where I needed to file formal complaints." "Why haven't you reported these incidents before now?" "Because I was hoping to resolve the situation without getting administrators involved. But if someone is now committing felonies on school property, that might not be possible anymore." Principal Davidson rubbed his forehead tiredly. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm going to need you to provide me with copies of your documentation. And I'm going to need to interview the students involved in both the harassment and this morning's incidents. Maya nodded. I'll have everything ready for you tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I want you to know that we take student safety very seriously here. If you feel threatened in any way, I want you to report it immediately. Thank you, Principal Davidson. I appreciate that. As Maya drove home, she reflected on the day's developments. Her intervention had achieved its primary objective of demonstrating her capabilities to her tormentors while also creating an opportunity to make formal complaints about their behavior. The balance of power had shifted dramatically in her favor. But she also knew that cornered adversaries could be unpredictable. Brittany and her friends were no longer dealing with someone they could safely harass without consequences. How they chose to respond to that revelation would determine whether the situation could be resolved peacefully or would require further escalation. That evening, Maya prepared detailed documentation of every incident of harassment she had experienced, complete with photos, timestamps, and witness information. She organized the material into a professional presentation that would be difficult for administrators to ignore or dismiss. She also prepared contingency plans for several possible responses from her opponents. If they chose to retreat and leave her alone, she would complete her senior year without further incident. If they chose to escalate further, she had additional tools available that would end the conflict permanently. The confrontation came 3 days later in the school parking lot after the final bell. Maya had just finished her meeting with Principal Davidson, where she had provided comprehensive documentation of the harassment campaign against her. The administrator had assured her that formal disciplinary action would be taken and that the students involved would be called in for interviews the following week. Maya was walking to her car when she found her path blocked by Brittany, Jessica, Amanda, and 6 other students she recognized as peripheral members of their social group. They had positioned themselves strategically between her and her vehicle, with additional students blocking potential escape routes toward the school building. "We need to talk," Brittany said, her usual composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled anger. Maya stopped walking and assessed the situation. 9 opponents, multiple exit routes blocked, numerous witnesses, including some with phones, already recording. The setup suggested they were planning something dramatic that would require significant de-escalation to avoid serious consequences for everyone involved. "What do you want to talk about?" Maya asked calmly. "You know exactly what we want to talk about," Jessica snapped. "What you did to our lockers. What you think you proved by playing your little games." Maya looked around the circle of hostile faces. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." "Cut the innocent act," Brittany said, stepping closer. "We know it was you. The question is what we're going to do about it. What are you thinking of doing?" Brittany smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Well, since you like playing mysterious spy games, we thought we'd show you what happens when you mess with the wrong people." Jessica pulled out her phone and held it up so Maya could see the screen. It displayed a photo of Maya's house with a red X drawn over the front door. "Nice place you've got there," Jessica said. "Very quiet neighborhood. Be a shame if something happened to disturb that peace." The threat against her family's home crossed the final line that Maya had been hoping to avoid. She felt something cold and dangerous settling into place behind her ribs, a familiar readiness that she had been suppressing for weeks. "You want to threaten my family?" Maya asked quietly. "I want to show you what happens when you think you can intimidate us," Brittany replied. "We own this town. Our families have been here for generations. You're nobody from nowhere, and it's time you learned your place." Maya looked around the circle again, noting positions and calculating distances. Her training automatically began running scenarios for neutralizing multiple threats without causing permanent damage. But she also became aware of the phones recording everything, the witnesses who would testify about whatever happened next. "Let me make sure I understand," Maya said. "You're threatening my family's safety because you think I accessed your lockers?" "We're not threatening anything," Amanda said nervously. "We're just showing you that you're not as smart as you think you are." "And what exactly do you think I am?" "Some kind of wannabe tough girl," Jessica said with a sneer. "Probably learned some basic tricks from watching too many movies. Think you can scare us with amateur hour nonsense." Maya was quiet for a long moment, studying each face in turn. They were all watching her expectantly, waiting for her to break down or back down under the pressure. What they saw instead was someone making very careful calculations. "You think I'm pretending to be something I'm not," Maya said finally. "We know you are," Brittany replied confidently. Maya nodded slowly. "Okay, I tried to handle this the quiet way. I tried to give you chances to walk away. But since you've decided to threaten my family." She trailed off and pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found the number she needed. "What are you doing?" Jessica demanded. "Making a phone call." Maya hit the call button and held the phone to her ear. It was answered on the first ring. "Commander Peterson's office. This is Rodriguez. I need to speak with the commander immediately. One moment, please." The circle of students looked confused and slightly nervous as they listened to Maya's side of the conversation. "Rodriguez," came Peterson's familiar voice. "Situation report. Multiple hostiles have escalated to direct threats against my family's residents. Request permission to reveal identity and terminate harassment permanently." There was a brief pause. "Are you in immediate physical danger?" Maya looked around at the 9 teenagers surrounding her. "Negative. But they've crossed the line regarding family safety." "Copy that. You have full authorization to reveal as much as necessary to resolve the situation. Try not to traumatize anyone permanently." "Understood, sir. Thank you." Maya hung up and put her phone away. The students were staring at her with expressions ranging from confusion to growing unease. "Who was that?" Brittany asked, her voice less confident than before. "Someone you really don't want to meet," Maya replied. "But he might not have to if you're willing to listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you." "We're not interested in listening to anything you have to say," Jessica said, though she sounded less certain than her words suggested. Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a manila folder. She opened it and began laying out photographs on the hood of the nearest car. "Brittany Coleman," she said, pointing to the first photo. "Daughter of Robert and Patricia Coleman. Lives at 1247 Elm Street in the large white colonial with the circular driveway. Bedroom window faces east, 2nd floor, no security system on that side of the house." Brittany's face went pale. "How do you know where I live?" Maya laid out another photo. "Jessica Martinez. Lives at 891 Pine Street in the Blue Ranch house with her mother and younger brother. Brother walks home from middle school alone every day at 3:15, takes the path through Riverside Park." "You're stalking us," Jessica said, but her voice was shaking. Maya continued laying out photos methodically. "Amanda Foster. Lives in the apartment complex on Maple Avenue, Unit 4B. Mother works evening shift at the hospital. Doesn't get home until after midnight most nights." "Stop," Amanda whispered. Maya looked up from the photos, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "Tom Harrison, Michael Chun, Sarah Winters." She continued naming each member of the group while laying out corresponding surveillance photos. "Should I continue?" "Who are you?" Brittany asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya gathered up the photos and put them back in the folder. "I'm someone who was trained by the United States Navy to identify, track, and neutralize threats to American citizens. I've completed missions in 7 different countries. I've been shot twice and survived an explosion that killed 3 other people." The parking lot had gone completely silent around them. Even the students who weren't directly involved in the confrontation had stopped what they were doing to listen. "I came here because my parents wanted me to have a normal senior year," Maya continued. "They wanted me to experience regular teenage life instead of the world I grew up in. So I tried to be normal. I tried to fit in. I tried to handle your harassment the way a regular 17-year-old girl would handle it." Jessica was backing away slowly, her earlier bravado completely evaporated. "But you made a critical error in judgment," Maya said, her voice remaining calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. "You threatened my family, and that changes everything about this situation." "We didn't mean," Amanda started. "Yes, you did. You calculated that threatening my home would give you leverage over me. You were wrong." Maya stepped forward, and the entire circle of students instinctively moved backward. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. "You're going to leave me alone. You're going to leave my family alone. You're going to stop your harassment campaign immediately and permanently. And, in return, I'm going to finish my senior year quietly and leave town after graduation." "And if we don't?" Brittany asked, though she seemed afraid to hear the answer. Maya smiled, and, for the first time since the confrontation began, She looked genuinely amused. Brittany, I could end your lives in ways you can't imagine without leaving evidence that would hold up in court. I could destroy your family's reputations, your parents' businesses, your futures. I could make you disappear so completely that no one would know where to start looking. She paused, letting that sink in. But I won't do any of those things, because I'm not a monster. I'm just someone who's very good at protecting what matters to her. The silence stretched out for nearly a minute while the students processed what they had just learned. Finally, Brittany found her voice. You're really? Yes. And you could really? Yes. Brittany looked around at her friends, then back at Maya. What do you want from us? Nothing. I want you to pretend this conversation never happened. I want you to go back to your normal lives, and let me live mine. I want you to understand that the girl you've been tormenting for the past month isn't who you thought she was. Jessica stepped forward hesitantly. Maya, we didn't know. We thought you were just. You thought I was weak, Maya said without anger. You thought I was someone you could hurt without consequences. You were wrong, but that's okay. Most people are wrong about things that matter. Are you going to report us? Amanda asked. Principal Davidson already has documentation of your harassment campaign. You'll face whatever consequences the school decides are appropriate. But I won't be pursuing this beyond that. Maya shouldered her backpack and started walking toward her car. The circle of students parted silently to let her pass. She was almost to her vehicle when Brittany called out behind her. Maya, why didn't you tell us? From the beginning, I mean. Why didn't you just say who you were? Maya turned around to face the group one last time. Because I wanted to be normal. Because I wanted to see if I could just be a regular high school student for once in my life. And can you? Be normal, I mean. Maya considered the question seriously. I don't know yet. But I'm going to try. She got in her car and drove away, leaving 9 teenagers standing in the parking lot trying to process what they had just experienced. Word of the confrontation spread through the school within hours. By the next morning, Maya found herself the subject of intense curiosity rather than harassment. Students pointed and whispered as she walked through the hallways, but the tone was completely different from what she had experienced before. Some approached her with respectful questions about her background. Others simply nodded acknowledgement as she passed. A few seemed frightened and actively avoided her, but even that was preferable to the calculated cruelty she had endured. Sarah Kim found her at lunch, sliding into the seat across from her with obvious excitement. Is it true? Sarah asked. What everyone's saying about yesterday. Maya looked up from her book. What is everyone saying? That you're some kind of secret agent. That you're trained by the military. That you showed Brittany photos of her house and made her cry. Maya smiled. Which part do you want me to confirm? Any of it. All of it. I'm trained by the Navy, Maya said simply. The rest is probably exaggerated. That is so cool. No wonder you never seemed scared of them. I was never scared of them because they were never actually dangerous. They were just trying to be. Sarah grinned. Are you going to tell me any stories? About missions or training or anything? Maya closed her book and gave Sarah her full attention. If you want to be friends, I'd rather talk about normal things. Movies, music, college applications. Regular teenage stuff. Is that what you want? To be normal? Maya looked around the cafeteria, noting the curious glances and whispered conversations happening at every table. I wanted to try it. But I think that ship has sailed. Maybe normal is overrated anyway, Sarah suggested. Maya laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that surprised them both. Maybe it is. The harassment ended immediately and completely. Brittany's group avoided Maya entirely, while other students treated her with a mixture of respect and fascination. Her grades remained excellent, and she participated in normal senior year activities like prom planning and college applications. Maya never confirmed or denied the various rumors about her background, allowing the truth to exist alongside speculation and exaggeration. She made a few close friends who accepted her without needing to know details about her past. At graduation, Principal Davidson approached her family after the ceremony. Your daughter is an exceptional young woman, he told Maya's parents. We're going to miss having her here. Maya's father shook the principal's hand. Thank you for giving her the chance to finish her education here. I have to ask, Principal Davidson said quietly. Was she really? David Rodriguez smiled. She's really ready for college. That's what matters now. As they walked to their car, Maya's mother took her arm gently. Any regrets? Maria asked. Maya looked back at the school building, then at her diploma, then at her parents who had sacrificed so much to give her this opportunity. No regrets, she said. I learned what I needed to learn. What was that? That sometimes the hardest mission is knowing when not to fight. Maya got in the car and looked ahead toward her future, leaving behind the first place where she had tried to be someone other than a weapon. It hadn't gone exactly as planned, but she had survived it, and more importantly, she had learned that survival could take many different forms. As they drove away from Lincoln High School for the last time, Maya realized that her quest for normalcy had taught her something more valuable than fitting in. It had taught her that she could choose who to be in any situation, and that sometimes the greatest strength was in choosing to be vulnerable enough to let others get close. The girl who had walked nervously into that school 4 months ago was gone. In her place was someone who understood that being extraordinary didn't mean she couldn't also be human. Maya Rodriguez was ready for whatever came next. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We know what you did. This isn't over. She studied the message for a moment, then typed back. It's over whenever you want it to be over. The choice is yours. The response came immediately. We're not afraid of you. Maya smiled and typed. That's unfortunate. Because you should be. She deleted the conversation and went to bed early. Tomorrow would bring either peace or war, depending on how intelligently her opponents chose to play their remaining cards. Maya was prepared for either outcome, though she genuinely hoped they would choose the path that allowed everyone to move on with their lives. But she was no longer pretending to be helpless. The mask had slipped just enough to reveal that there was something dangerous underneath, and now her tormentors had to decide whether they were smart enough to recognize a predator when they saw one. Maya fell asleep wondering if Brittany Coleman understood that she had been hunting the wrong prey all along. Tomorrow would teach them the difference between a victim and someone who was simply choosing not to fight back. Maya went to bed early, setting her alarm for 4 in the morning. She needed time to prepare for what was coming, both mentally and physically. The girl who had walked nervously into Lincoln High School 3 weeks ago was about to reveal that she was not quite what she seemed. But she was also determined to reveal only as much as necessary to solve the immediate problem. Her parents' dream of a normal senior year wasn't completely dead yet, even if it needed to be redefined slightly to accommodate the realities of her situation. Maya fell asleep planning the most carefully calibrated response of her young life, knowing that tomorrow would determine whether she could finish high school as a regular student or whether her cover was about to be blown completely. Wasn't completely alone in this situation. If things got serious enough to require intervention, she had resources available. But she also understood what Peterson was telling her. Using those resources would end any chance of completing her senior year as a normal student. It would mean abandoning the quiet life her parents had sacrificed so much to give her. Maya looked out her window at the peaceful suburban street below. Maple Street was everything her parents had dreamed of: safe, quiet, normal. The kind of place where teenage girls worried about homework and dating instead of survival and combat. She wanted to protect that dream for as long as possible. But she also knew that some threats couldn't be ignored, no matter what the cost of addressing them might be. The question was whether Brittany Coleman and her friends understood the difference between a target and a predator. Maya suspected they were about to find out. Hence, she would graduate and move on to college, leaving this place behind. The question was whether she could last that long without either breaking her cover or breaking under the pressure. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message to Carmen. Still standing after day 2. Getting interesting. Carmen's response came back immediately. Remember what you're made of. They have no idea what they're dealing with. Maya smiled and put the phone aside. Carmen was right, of course. Brittany Coleman and her friends had no idea what they were dealing with. But Maya was beginning to realize that she might not either. Playing weak was turning out to be the hardest role she had ever taken on.